All right, before we jump into this course, there's a few things that you need to make sure you understand just for safety purposes. The big thing is you need to understand the difference between pain and discomfort. This is an advanced course, so invariably that means that you're going to have a little bit of discomfort doing it. You're going to have a little bit of burning sensation in the muscles, you're going to get a little bit of a pump, a little bit of swelling. These are the kind of things that are actually beneficial, and in the long run, they're going to help you adapt to the stress of the workout. So that is discomfort. Pain is something different entirely. Pain is something that gets worse and worse as you go, and more commonly it's very sharp, can feel like a searing pain or a pinching pain or a nerve pain or those sorts of things. So certain kinds of pain are actually okay to push through. You'll know which ones are okay to push through by the fact that they should get better as you go through your exercises. If it turns out that they're getting worse as you go through your exercises, you need to alter something. We don't want you to push through pain unless it's starting to get better as you go. Discomfort, on the other hand, I'd encourage you to really lean into that. Not only is there some benefit as far as the endurance and strength training goes, but there's actually some psychological benefit as well to really leaning into the discomfort and realizing that you're entirely fine and you'll get through it. One other thing to be on the lookout for is nerve issues. So most of us won't have these issues, but some of us will. The most common one that we've got in the upper limb is going to be carpal tunnel syndrome. So carpal tunnel syndrome, a true blue carpal tunnel syndrome, actually gives us a really weak grip because it affects a lot of the muscles that are intrinsic to our hand, and it also gives us a loss of sensation most of the time in our first 3 fingers. So if you have carpal tunnel syndrome or you've had carpal tunnel surgery, it's just very important that you go slowly once you start this course. There's no reason you can't do this course, but because we're going to be increasing the blood flow to the area, and sometimes we get a little bit of a pump and the muscles will get a little bit bigger, certain people will experience a little bit of a worsening of the symptoms of carpal tunnel during their exercises. The vast majority of the people, it's going to be entirely fine. It will go away very quickly, and you can probably do it anyway. But if you're at the point where you actually have a loss of grip power and a loss of sensation, you are at a risk of potentially dropping a dumbbell or making it a little bit worse if you push too far too soon. So if this describes you with carpal tunnel or any other nerve entrapment issue where you have a change of sensation or strength in your arm, it's very important that you go very slowly once you're beginning this course. The next thing I want to talk about is rotator cuff tears. So rotator cuff tears are very commonly misunderstood. The main reason being a lot of people have them. More than half of people have rotator cuffs just walking around in the street. The big difference between that and people who have had issues with them is purely just pain, and sometimes it's size. So you can actually have a really small rotator cuff tear and you could never know it and have no pain and be fully functional. But if you've had a large rotator cuff tear, particularly a full thickness rotator cuff tear, and one that's caused you repeated problems, it's very important that you start this course slowly and ease into it. I'd highly encourage you, if that's you, to take an extra day in between every one of the days in this course just to make sure that you're giving yourself adequate rest and you're not irritating your rotator cuff. Most people should be entirely fine, even if they've had minor issues with it before. But if you've had a big issue with it, a full thickness tear, or a surgery on it, I want you to make sure you're going very slow. And if you need to, get the approval of the rehab professional that you've sought for care after those surgeries or injuries. Next thing is going to be golfer's elbow and tennis elbow, which just describes a tendonitis on the inside or the outside of the elbow, which most commonly come up with tennis or golf. So for most people, this is actually a loading problem, meaning that they loaded too aggressively or too soon, and that's how they got this tendonitis. As a result, this kind of course, because we're loading the area and we're gripping, can actually aggravate it a little bit. Most people, loading properly is actually the way they're going to feel better from tennis elbow or golfer's elbow. But in certain scenarios, if you go too quick, too soon, there is a chance that you can aggravate it. So again, if you've had golfer's elbow or tennis elbow, it's really important that you start slowly and ease your way into it and err on the side of less. When it comes to pain, I want you to push into it a little bit unless it's getting worse as you go. But for the most part, less is more when it comes to golfer's elbow and tennis elbow. Next, we need to talk about surgeries and fusions. So there's not many things that get a huge amount of surgery in the upper arm, but a lot of people, especially the elderly that have had falls, many will have wrist fusions, and that will mean that your wrist doesn't get a full range of motion. If that's you, that's entirely fine. I still want you to go through and take this course. It's going to benefit you greatly. All I want you to do is make sure anytime I'm doing something that requires a big range of motion through the wrist, that you're not trying to push it through an extravagant range of motion that you don't have access to. So just make sure if you have a fusion anywhere in your body that you're still doing the exercises, you're just doing it in the range of motion that you easily have access to, and don't try to push it too hard towards the end of that. The last thing is cardiovascular issues. So many people suffer from cardiovascular issues, whether that be blood pressure issues or cholesterol issues or something else. There's no reason you shouldn't be taking this course. But if you have an extravagant version of this, or you have really high blood pressure, or you're unstable in some way with your cardiovascular issues, I really want you to make sure you get the approval of your medical provider before you begin this course. This isn't one that's intended to or designed to strain your cardiovascular system more than other parts of you, but it is going to have a little bit of strain to it just because we're doing some exercise, we're getting our heart rate up, and we're probably going to be breathing a little bit heavy and sweating a little bit. Not as much as we would doing cardiovascular exercise, but it's still there. So if you have any kind of risk from your cardiovascular system, I really want you to make sure you get the approval of your medical provider before starting this course. And that's it for the list. But if you're in doubt, whether it's due to previous injuries or surgeries or any other kind of risk that you have, I want you to make sure that you're seeking the advice of a registered healthcare provider before beginning this course. If in doubt, just go slow. Let's jump in.